The more corrupt the state, the more numerous the laws. Tacitus dropped that signal 2,000 years ago, and today it's trending across the simulation like it was a fresh leak from a whistleblower. Why is it resonating now? Because you can feel the friction. The regulatory explosion we're living through isn't about safety. It's not about protecting the consumer. It's about the frantic, late-stage twitching of institutional decay. When an organization loses its core tenets, when it no longer has a shared system of wisdom, it tries to patch the holes with 1,000 petty rules. But rules are just noise. They're the leaky bucket of a legal system trying to contain the evaporation of a society's soul. If you see 1,000 new laws, don't look for more safety. Look for the rot. The more rules they write, the less trust they have. And when trust hits zero, the laws are just the bars of a cage they're building around you while the roof caves in. Good morning and welcome to the highlight of human civilization. It's called Coffee with Ibsa, and you've never had a better time. You've survived another rotation of the simulation, and you've chosen to spend your most precious resource, your attention, here in the cat cave. That is a high-resolution decision. You could be out there, drowning in the low-res noise of the outrage economy. You could be letting the legacy media pump your moist computer full of fear-based dopamine hits. But you didn't. You chose the signal. You chose the deconstruction. We are going to move you today. We are going to move you from being a passive passenger in a decaying institutional system to being the lead administrator of your own reality. But before we get to the data, before we peel back the layers of the leaky bucket of abundance, we have to address the hardware. Your brain, the moist computer sitting between your ears, is currently being bombarded by an information overload weapon of unprecedented scale. The world out there is designed to fragment you. It's designed to scatter your focus into 1,000,000 tiny glowing pixels until you no longer have a self, just a collection of triggered responses. They want you in a state of loser think, where you're so busy mind-reading and fortune-telling that you forget to build your own systems. Here in the cat cave, we don't do that. Here we calibrate, we slow the frame rate, we look at the simulation with a grumpy, wise, strategically optimistic eye. We find the attention that matters. But calibration requires synchronization. We must reach across the network and synchronize our biological hardware so we can process the coming deconstructions as a unified network of intelligence. All you need is a cup or a mug or a glass, a tankard, chalice or stein, a canteen, jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee, black as the void, hot enough to remind the biological sensors that the simulation has physical consequences. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure of the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better, the anchor of sanity in a late-stage civilization. It's called the simultaneous sip. It happens now. Divine. Truly extraordinary. I could feel the synchronicity hit the very edge of the network. The simulation just smoothed out its frame rate, the noise is fading, and the signal is beginning to glow. We are now in sync. We are now ready to look at the rot and find the gold hidden beneath it. Settled in? Good. Because the attention economy wants your outrage, but I want your clarity. We are going to look at why the schools broke your children's brains, why the global elite are terrified of decentralized atoms, and why sovereignty is suddenly something you can buy for $1 billion on a subscription plan. It's going to be a high data rate ride. Stay with me, stay in the cave. Let's look at the first data point. The latest PISA and UNESCO reports are out, and if you're looking for the definitive medical chart for civilizational health, this is it. Mathematics and reading scores have seen an unprecedented global drop. We're not talking about a little statistical noise or a minor dip in a few districts. We're talking about a civilizational cliff, a wholesale collapse of the core intellectual functions of the next generation of moist computers. And here's where the two movies on one screen effect is most potent. The legacy media and the educational bureaucracy want you to believe in the pandemic movie. They want you to think this was just a temporary bug in the system caused by a few years of remote learning. But the data, the cold, hard pattern recognition shows the rot started right around 2010. What happened in 2010? That was the year the institutional decay engine reached a fever pitch in education. It was the year we decided that computers in the classroom was the ultimate goal. It wasn't a system for learning. It was a metric for looking high-tech to parents, donors, and the experts in the ivory towers. We flooded schools with screens, we handed iPads to toddlers before they could even grip a pencil, and we told ourselves we were future-proofing the children. What we were actually doing was remapping the internal hardware of the moist computer for distraction. The OECD finally admitted it in their latest post-mortem. Intensive computer use at school is now directly associated with poorer academic performance. Think about that for a second. We spent hundreds of billions of dollars to intentionally install a distraction machine into the middle of the learning process. We filled the leaky bucket of abundance with digital toys, and those toys siphoned away the only thing that actually matters for human development: deep, sustained attention. You cannot learn deep logic, you cannot build a talent stack of critical thinking while your brain is being pinged by a dopamine delivery device every 11 seconds. This is the information overload weapon deployed against our own children by the very institutions sworn to protect them. The schools didn't fail to use technology, they successfully optimized for engagement over literacy. When you remap a brain for engagement, you are training it to be reactive. You are training it to wait for the next stimulus, the next dopamine hit, the next low-resolution outrage. You are literally breaking the hardware's ability to perform long-form, high-resolution computation. This is how a civilization commits cognitive suicide. They traded the atoms of real understanding for the bits of digital entertainment, and now the simulation is adjusting itself to reflect that loss of signal. The decline isn't a mystery. It's a design choice. If you want a population that is easy to manage, easy to persuade, and easy to keep in a state of loser-think, you take away their ability to read and do math, and you replace it with a screen that tells them what to feel. The Great Cognitive Decline is the ultimate symptom of institutional decay, where the organization exists solely to perpetuate its own budget and appearance, while the actual output is a generation of broken biological computers. We are raising kids who can navigate a TikTok algorithm but can't solve for X. And when you can't solve for X, you become a variable in someone else's equation. That is the goal of the decay. We need to build a system to reverse this, starting with the hardware in our own homes. Over 60 Labour MPs in the UK are now advocating for a total ban on social media access for anyone under 16. This is a classic high ground maneuver. They're framing it as protecting the children from the very same blue light rot we just deconstructed in the classroom. But look at the institutional decay here. The government isn't trying to build a better system for education or digital literacy. They're trying to build a wall. They've realized that the information overload weapon is so effective that they can't even control the children anymore. The moist computer is being programmed by decentralized algorithms that the state doesn't own. In a healthy civilization, you teach the children how to use their filters. You build a talent stack of critical thinking so they can spot the two movies on their own. In a decaying civilization, you just ban the hardware. It's the leaky bucket again. They can't stop the siphoning of attention, so they're trying to smash the bucket entirely. Is it a cure? Maybe for the immediate dopamine addiction. But it's also a massive expansion of state power over the private digital lives of families. They're thinking past the sale by assuming the state is the only one qualified to be the administrator of a child's attention. If they ban social media today, what becomes the information overload weapon of tomorrow? The state-run educational portals? We are seeing the state try to regain control of the moist robot by force. But the simulation is already moving past them. A ban is just a low-resolution patch for a high-resolution problem. The answer isn't a government padlock. It's an individual filter. In a world where energy is the new gold, India's discoms, the power distribution companies, just reported a profit of over 2,700 crore. This is a massive turnaround. Why does this matter to you? Because it's a countersignal to the global decay. While the West is paralyzed by the two movies of energy policy, Side A, fossil fuels are evil. Side B, renewables are a scam. India is just building systems. They are integrating solar, coal, and nuclear into a pragmatic talent stack of atoms. They are plugging the leaks in their bucket. They realized that in a late-stage civilization, energy security is the only thing that separates a functioning state from a failed simulation. They aren't waiting for a Davos permission slip to power their AI revolution. They're building the atoms today so they can run the bits tomorrow. This is what strategic optimism looks like when it's backed by a functioning system. India is showing the world that abundance isn't a theory, it's an infrastructure project. While other nations are arguing over which movie to watch, India is writing its own script. And that script is powered by a reliable grid. Wildfires in Chile have killed 15 people and evacuated 50,000. Meanwhile, the UN is issuing warnings about Sudan and Gaza. Look at the high ground maneuver here. The institutions love the warning movie. They love to print high-resolution reports about low-resolution tragedies. They use information overload to make you feel like the world is ending, which keeps you in a state of paralysis. But when the fire actually hits the ground in Chile, where are the global systems? They're busy writing the next report. This is the institutional decay filter in its purest form. The organization has become so focused on its internal processes, its meetings, its warnings, its fundraising, that it has lost the ability to act on the physical atoms of a crisis. They offer you the dopamine hit of caring without the system of doing. It's a leaky bucket of empathy that siphons your attention away from the local systems that actually protect you. If you're waiting for a global institution to save you from a wildfire or a conflict, you're watching the wrong movie. The real signal is local resilience. The real signal is building systems that can handle the atoms when the bits stop flowing. The World Economic Forum is gathered in the snow again, and they are genuinely terrified. They're warning about AI fragmentation and energy strain, but you have to use the Scott filter here. When the WEF says they're worried about strain, they mean they're worried about unauthorized usage. AI is a god in a box, but the box is an energy hog. It needs a massive, constant flow of atoms, electricity, to generate its bits. The global elite want a centralized green energy grid because a centralized grid is a control lever. If AI fragments, if the models become small enough to run on local hardware, if compute becomes decentralized, they lose their ability to throttle the leaky bucket. They are using the high ground maneuver of climate stability to justify why they should be the ones to manage the global compute supply. They want to be the admins of the God box. They aren't worried about the planet, they're worried about the simulation adjusting itself in a way they can't tax or censor. If your AI runs on a server they control, they can filter your reality. They can choose which movie you get to see. But if it runs on your own hardware, powered by a decentralized source, their institutional decay becomes visible to everyone. This is the real war of 2026. It's not about politics. It's about who controls the atoms that power the intelligence. It's about the elite trying to plug the leaks in their bucket of control before the God in a box helps you build your own bucket. Vietnam has just announced it is joining the Gaza Peace Council as a founding member. This is the Board of Peace model going global. Why Vietnam? Because they are the ultimate moist robot pragmatists. They don't have the luxury of the two movies of Western ideological purity. They see a system that works, the Transactional Peace ledger, and they're buying in. They're thinking past the sale of traditional treaties and moving straight to the paid tier of global stability. This is the talent stack of a rising nation. They know that in a world of institutional decay, the only thing that matters is the energy and the ledger. By joining the council, they are securing their own leaky bucket. They are siphoning stability away from the old, decaying alliances and into the new, transactional ones. It's a clean, high-resolution move that makes the old UN look like a grainy black-and-white rerun. Vietnam is playing the long game. They are refactoring their sovereignty into a service. They know that in the future, peace won't be guaranteed by a flag or a song, but by a wire transfer and a seat at the table where the simulations are run. President Trump is proposing a $1 billion entry fee for a permanent seat on his new Board of Peace. India has already been invited to join the Gaza board. We are officially moving past the era of two movies on one screen diplomacy. You remember the old way? Endless meetings in wood-paneled rooms, shared values that nobody could define, and treaties that were basically just high-resolution noise. It was a goal-oriented system that failed because it wasn't a system at all. It was a performance. Now we are entering the era of the transactional ledger. Sovereignty is being refactored into a subscription service. You want stability? You want a seat at the table where the global simulations are actually run? Pay the fee. It's the ultimate thinking past the sale. We aren't debating if we should have a global peace board. We're just discussing the annual subscription price. It's cold, it's transactional, and it's remarkably honest for a late-stage civilization. Diplomacy is finally becoming as transparent as a Netflix account. If you're a nation-state and you can't afford the billion-dollar tier, you're just an NPC in someone else's movie. This is the leaky bucket applied to global power. The old systems of values and alliances were just the noise. The transactional wire transfer is the signal. It's the moist robot version of geopolitics. Input the $1 billion, receive the security output. No feelings required. This is the simulation adjusting itself to the reality of institutional decay. When the institutions can no longer produce trust, they produce invoices. The EU is prepping 93 billion euros in retaliatory tariffs against the US. Why? Because of threats over Greenland and trade dominance. This is what happens when institutional decay reaches the global layer. The old alliances, the ones built on the two movies of the 20th century, are dissolving into a pile of bureaucratic friction. The friction is heating up because the leaky bucket of global trade is running dry. Everyone is fighting over the remaining sips. Greenland is just the visual persuasion anchor. It's a landmass, sure, but in the simulation it's a placeholder for strategic leverage. The real story is the collapse of the post-World War II order. We are watching a high-stakes divorce where both parties are trying to keep the house and the car while the roof is caving in. The EU is taking the high ground maneuver, claiming they are protecting fair trade and sovereignty, while the US is just checking the ledger and realizing the deal has changed. In a late-stage civilization, large entities stop cooperating because cooperation requires trust, and trust is a high-resolution asset that has been depleted by years of corruption. When institutions decay, they stop cooperating and start cannibalizing. They focus on internal rules and petty tariffs because they can no longer generate actual abundance. We are in the cannibalization phase of the transatlantic relationship. The two movies here are Side A, the US is a bully demanding territory. Side B, the EU is a decaying museum trying to tax the only productive economy left. Both movies are self-consistent and both are symptoms of the Great Decay. The moist computer in the EU is being programmed to hate the US bully, while the US computer is being programmed to see the EU as a leech. Both are being fed low-resolution noise to keep them from seeing the real signal, that the old bucket is broken and we need a new way to share the atoms. The trend is shifting, and it's the most optimistic signal in the data today. We're moving away from massive, centralized cloud models towards smaller, smarter, local compute models that live on your hardware. This is the simulation adjusting itself to survive the decay. Centralized AI is a leaky bucket of control. If the intelligence lives in the cloud, it can be filtered, throttled, and turned off by the admins of the decay. But Edge AI, intelligence that runs on your phone, your watch, your local hardware, is a distribution of power. It's the talent stack for the moist computer. When your intelligence doesn't depend on a server in Virginia, you are less susceptible to the information overload weapon. You can run your own filters. You can process your own reality. The cloud is the decay. The edge is the cure. Power is moving back to the individual. And the institutions are terrified because you can't censor a chip that's in a user's pocket. It's the ultimate God in a box for every person. This is the golden age pivot we've been waiting for. The technology is finally outpacing the decay of the organizations trying to own it. Scott Adams' legacy is being discussed in the simulation today. He spent 30 years satirizing corporate absurdity. He showed us the Dilbert principle, that the least competent people are moved to where they can do the least damage, management. He taught us that the world isn't run by logic, but by persuasion and heuristics. But look around. The satire is gone. We are now living in a fully Dilbertized reality. When the simulation becomes the satire, the satirist is no longer needed. We have reached a point where institutional decay is so high resolution that you can't make fun of it anymore. You just have to survive it. Scott gave us the filters to see the two movies. He taught us about moist robots and how we're programmed by dopamine hits and cognitive shortcuts. He showed us that loserthink is the default state of the uncalibrated brain. Now it's up to us to use those tools. We are the legacy. We are the ones who have to navigate the attention that matters using the maps he drew in the margins of a comic strip. The pointy-haired boss isn't a character anymore. He's the director of every major institution. He's the one writing the 93 billion euro tariffs. He's the one putting the iPads in the classrooms. And our job is to not be the ones caught in the cubicle when the building starts to lean. We use the filters to see the rot, and we use the systems to build our own cave. Calibration check. We've deconstructed the decay. We've looked at the siphoning of your cognitive energy in the classroom, the transactional refactoring of peace, and the crumbling of global trade. But why do we do this? Is it to make you angry? No. Anger is just low-resolution energy. It's noise. The attention economy loves your anger. They feed on it. They want you focused on the latest linguistic kill shot or the newest outrage from Davos. They want your mental energy trapped in a loop of reactive outrage. That is the information overload weapon in action. It paralyzes your ability to act. It keeps you in the loser-think trap of believing you know what others are thinking or fortune-telling a doom that hasn't happened yet. We do this deconstruction to find the attention that matters. The signal. The signal is that the God in a box is moving to the edge. The signal is that global power is becoming transactional and transparent. The signal is that the leaky bucket is being exposed. When you see the rot for what it is, a mechanical failure of large systems, you stop being afraid of it. You stop being a passenger. You start becoming the administrator. The attention that matters is the energy you spend on your own systems. It's the energy you spend on your own talent stack. If you're focused on the divorce between the EU and the US, you're watching a movie. If you're focused on how to run a local AI model on your own hardware to protect your family's data, you're in the golden age. Shift your focus. Stop looking at the noise. Look at the leverage. Look at where the simulation is actually adjusting. That is where your power lives. How do you navigate a world where the schools broke your children's brains and the elite are trying to centralize the atoms? You build systems. If your goal was be smart, you probably feel like you failed because you spent 2010 to 2025 staring at a screen that was designed to make you stupid. That's a goal-oriented failure. But if your system is digital vigilance, restricting your screen time, focusing on high-resolution data, and ignoring the low-res noise of the outrage economy, you win every single day. Don't set a goal to understand the news. That's a trap set by the attention economy to keep you clicking. Instead, build a system to filter it. Use the institutional decay filter to spot the rot before it hits you. Use the leaky bucket filter to find where your energy is being siphoned. Protect your moist computer's hardware from the blue light rot. Establishing a process, a repeatable daily set of actions, is the only way to maintain your agency in a late-stage civilization. Goals are rigid, systems are adaptable. If the simulation adjusts, you adjust your system. You stay one step ahead of the Dilbertized reality. The simulation is adjusting, the edge is rising, the atoms are being refactored. You have the tools, you have the filters, you have the systems. Now go build something divine, stay hungry, be useful.